I had been counting down the days to my daughter's due date like a child waiting for Christmas. This wasn't just about the baby. It was about Lisa, my only child, stepping into motherhood, and me, stepping back into her life in a way I hadn't been needed for years. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 64 years old. I've worked as a librarian, a baker, a caregiver. But first and foremost, I've been a mother. Every year, every decision, every sacrifice was for Lisa. I raised her mostly alone after her father passed when she was 7. I never remarried. I told myself I didn't need to. Lisa was enough. She was my purpose. So when she told me she was pregnant, I felt something light up inside me. Hope maybe. Or purpose returning like an old friend. I started knitting again for the first time in 20 years. Booties, hats, little blankets. I bought diapers in bulk. Researched baby bottles like they were sacred artifacts. My living room turned into a miniature nursery. Every shelf lined with items I imagined Lisa would need. Not just for the baby, but for herself too. Herbal teas, nipple cream, soft slippers, and postpartum care kits. I labeled everything. Organized each tote like a professional doula. Her texts were brief, but warm. Thanks, Mom. You didn't have to, but thank you. And always followed by a smiley face emoji. I didn't read too much into the quietness. Lisa had always been soft-spoken. And now she was heavily pregnant, working part-time, tired. Her husband, Michael, wasn't much for phone calls either. But I trusted that when I showed up with everything, my arms, my heart, and my care, I'd be welcomed, needed, loved. I took the 5-hour drive with my little Corolla packed to the brim. Every bump in the road jostled a bottle or a box of wipes. I had planned this visit down to the hour. 2 weeks before her due date, enough time to help settle in. Enough time to be there when contractions started. When I pulled into their driveway, my heart thudded like a drum. Their townhouse looked smaller than I'd imagined. New paint, potted flowers outside, a big pink sign on the door. It's a girl. I smiled. I remember when I hung a sign like that for Lisa. Hers had been handmade from cardboard and glitter. This one looked like it came from Etsy. But still, the sentiment was sweet. I rang the bell, and then everything changed. The door opened, and it wasn't Lisa standing there. It was Michael's mother, Doreen. Doreen looked like she'd stepped off the cover of a lifestyle magazine. Impeccable hair. Lipstick that didn't budge. She wore one of those cardigans that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Oh," she said, blinking at me. "You made it. We weren't sure if you still planned to come." Still planned? I had sent Lisa my ETA. I had even texted her from the gas station 2 hours ago. Before I could respond, Doreen stepped back, motioning me inside with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The house smelled like lavender and freshly baked cookies. "From scratch," she said, as if I'd asked. I hadn't. The kitchen was pristine. The dining table set with matching napkins and a cake that read, "Welcome, Baby Joy," in swirly pink icing. And that's when Lisa came down the stairs, heavily pregnant, glowing, yes, but also pale. There was a flicker of something in her eyes when she saw me. Not joy, not warmth, something quieter, a kind of hesitation that stung more than words. "Hi, Mom," she said. She hugged me, but it was brief. Her arms were limp. No squeeze. No warmth. I didn't mention it. I didn't dare. I just smiled and said, "I brought everything. I have the bags in the car, bottles, diapers, the tea you love, even the—" Doreen cut in before I could finish. "Oh, Eleanor, that's very kind, but we're actually all set. Michael and I already did a big Target run last week. And Lisa's sister-in-law had a shower for her. We have more than enough." Lisa said nothing. I blinked. "But I brought enough for the whole first month. Organic stuff. The kind she likes. Oh, I'm sure it's lovely. You really didn't have to go through all that trouble." Doreen's voice was smooth. Too smooth. "We've got it covered." I turned to Lisa. "Sweetheart, do you want me to bring it in?" Lisa smiled weakly. "Maybe just leave it for now. We're kind of overwhelmed with stuff." I nodded. But inside, something started to sink, like a stone dropped in water. They didn't want my help. No, Doreen didn't want my help. And Lisa, she was letting her speak for both of them. We sat down for tea, which Doreen served in bone china cups with matching saucers. Lisa looked tired, uncomfortable. She barely touched her drink. I tried to talk about the baby, her name, her room, what they still needed, but every topic I brought up, Doreen redirected or answered for her. She'll be using cloth diapers, of course, Doreen said with finality. None of that chemical nonsense. She won't be needing formula, she added later. Lisa's going to breastfeed exclusively. We've already met with a lactation coach. Every time she spoke, it felt like a door closing in my face. After an hour, I excused myself to freshen up. I locked myself in their tiny guest bathroom and stared at my reflection. What was I doing here? I thought I was coming to help. I thought I'd be changing diapers, singing lullabies, boiling water for late-night bottles. I thought I'd be holding my daughter's hand through her tears and fear and awe. That I'd get to hold my granddaughter first. That Lisa would want me there. But now, I wasn't even sure they had a room for me. I walked back into the living room. Doreen and Lisa were chatting about something on the baby registry. They didn't notice me right away. That's when I made the decision. I walked to the front door. Where are you going? Lisa asked, finally noticing. I think I'll just head back for now, I said softly. Wait, you just got here. It's all right, I said, my voice steady. Seems like you have everything covered. Lisa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a mother's smile, the kind you wear when you're breaking inside but won't show it. Then I stepped outside, walked to my car, and opened the trunk. And quietly, without fuss, I started putting the diapers, the bottles, the burp cloths, the organic creams, every last thing I had brought back into my car. Because if I wasn't needed, then neither were the gifts. I drove away with the sun low behind me, casting long shadows on the highway, the kind that make everything look older than it is. My car was full, not just of diapers and bottles, but of silence. A silence so loud it rang in my ears. My phone sat face down in the passenger seat. No new messages, no missed calls, not even from Lisa, not even a drive safe mom. I kept waiting for my emotions to catch up with me, for the tears to start, but they didn't. Maybe they were stuck somewhere in the back of my throat, where all my unsaid thoughts had gathered. I replayed the moment in the living room. The way Lisa looked away, the way Doreen spoke for her, the way I was slowly erased from a space I thought I belonged to. Maybe I should have said something more direct. Maybe I should have fought harder. But at 64, I've learned something most people only realize too late. Begging for a place in someone's life never ends the way you hope. I had planned to stay for 3 weeks. Instead, I was on the road again after less than 2 hours. I stopped at a rest area halfway home. Just me, a vending machine, and a family of 4 who didn't notice me. I sat at a metal picnic table and drank lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. The wind picked up, brushing against my coat, making me wish I had remembered to bring my scarf. There was a time Lisa used to remind me about things like that. Don't forget your scarf, Mom. You always get cold. Now she didn't remind me of anything. Didn't seem to remember much at all. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I opened our last text thread. There was a heart emoji from a few days ago, after I sent a picture of the baby clothes I'd folded. She had replied, thanks, Mom. It didn't match what had happened today. It didn't match the woman who sat there and let her mother-in-law dismiss me like an extra chair at the table. My fingers hovered over the screen. I thought about writing something calm, something maternal. But what was there to say? Instead, I typed 3 words, I love you, and hit send. Then I got back in the car. The closer I got to my house, the heavier everything felt. My home is quiet. It's always been quiet since my husband passed. But tonight, it felt different. Like the walls were listening. Like they knew I'd returned earlier than I was supposed to. I parked in the driveway, sat still for a moment, then opened the trunk. I didn't unpack. I just stood there looking at the label bags and boxes, each one still packed with hope that hadn't been used. All those tiny things, pacifiers, baby shampoo, a copy of Goodnight Moon, they looked ridiculous now. Like I'd been planning a surprise party for someone who never wanted one. I left them in the car. I walked into the house and turned on just one lamp. And then I sat down on the edge of my bed, shoes still on, coat still zipped, and stared at the framed photo of Lisa on my nightstand. She was 5 years old in that picture, missing her two front teeth, holding a crayon drawing she made of the two of us holding hands under a rainbow. I remember the day she gave me that picture. She had said, "This is us forever, Mommy." Now I couldn't even hold her hand while she gave birth. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought of all the things I wanted to do with her, making soup while the baby slept, folding little clothes together, telling her stories of when she was born. But none of it was needed. I wasn't needed. And that realization, it didn't come like a punch. It came like a cold wind slipping through a window you thought was shut. Slow, subtle. I shivered. I didn't cry that night. Instead, I laid there in the dark and whispered out loud, "Was I ever going to be enough for you again?" No one answered. The next morning, the car was still packed. I made a cup of coffee, sat in the same spot I always did by the kitchen window, and watched the neighborhood wake up. A man walked his dog. A kid rode his bike with a backpack too big for his frame. Somewhere, someone was getting ready to become a mother. And somewhere else, a mother was being told she wasn't welcome anymore. The phone never rang. No text from Lisa. No check-in. Nothing. I told myself she was tired, busy, pregnant, distracted. But part of me knew it wasn't about the baby. It wasn't about timing. It was about something deeper. Control. Doreen had carved her place into Lisa's life in a way I never thought I'd need to fight for. And now it seemed there wasn't room for two grandmothers, and Lisa had chosen. Or worse, she had let someone else choose for her. I stood up, went to the car, and started unloading the bags. Not with sadness, with resolve. I unpacked everything, set the bottles back on the shelf, res-tacked the diapers in the hall closet, took the tiny onesies and folded them again, not for Lisa's baby, just because they were mine now. My offering, my love. I didn't know what I'd do with them, but I couldn't leave them in the car like forgotten luggage. They deserved more than that. So did I. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk around the block. The sun was out, but the wind had bite. I pulled my coat tighter, lifted my chin, and reminded myself I had survived worse. I had buried a husband. I had raised a daughter alone. I had paid bills with nothing but grit and grace. And now I would survive this too. But not quietly. Something inside me had shifted, just slightly. Like a hairline crack in a vase you don't notice until the light hits it just right. I wasn't broken yet, but something had started. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Days turned into weeks. I didn't hear from Lisa. Not even when her due date came and went. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a forwarded photo of the baby bump she once couldn't stop talking about. I didn't ask. I didn't reach out again. After that final "I love you," I told myself, the next move isn't mine. But it didn't mean it didn't hurt. I kept busy. That's what women like me do. When the world forgets you, you keep moving, because if you stop, the silence becomes too loud. So I cleaned out the garage, alphabetized the spice rack, reorganized the linen closet like it was a sacred ritual. Some nights, I sat in the rocking chair with a cup of tea and held the tiny pink blanket I had knitted for my granddaughter. Ran my fingers along each stitch. I had imagined wrapping her in it. Now I wasn't even sure I'd know her name. I told myself it was fine, that I didn't need to be part of their picture-perfect story. But late at night, when the house creaked and the tea grew cold, I'd whisper to no one she was supposed to need me. Because that's what we tell ourselves, isn't it? That the years we give, the sleepless nights, the scraped knees, the birthday cakes made from scratch, will one day come back to us in the form of gratitude. A place at the table, a phone call, a hand to hold in the delivery room. But sometimes the years just vanish, and we're left holding memories like glass, beautiful, fragile, and sharp if you hold them too long. 3 weeks passed. Then one afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a picture, a newborn, swaddled in pale yellow, eyes shut tight, a tuft of dark hair. Underneath it, 3 words. She's here. Joy. No signature. No warmth. No "Hi, Mom." Just joy. I stared at the screen for a long time, tried to feel something, but instead of the flood of love I thought would come, I felt a wall. Because by the time I received the photo, she had already been born, and I hadn't been there. I didn't know what room she was delivered in. I didn't know how long the labor had lasted. I didn't know if Lisa had cried, if Michael had fainted, if Doreen had been in the room holding her hand like I was supposed to. I didn't know anything. And that's when the grief changed. It stopped being sadness. It became a quiet kind of clarity. That day I walked to my closet, pulled down a dusty box labeled "For Lisa" and sat on the floor with it. Inside were baby pictures, letters I had written her over the years, a drawing she made in second grade of me as a superhero with a cape and a grocery bag in each hand. I laid it all out on the carpet, piece by piece, proof that I had loved her fiercely, fully, proof that I had been her foundation, even if she no longer remembered. I took one photo, a picture of Lisa as a baby wrapped in a blanket almost identical to the one I'd made for Joy, and I framed it, set it by my bedside table. That night, I made myself a promise. If I wasn't going to be part of Lisa's new story, then I was going to write one of my own. Because my life didn't end with motherhood. And if no one else would choose me now, then I would. The next morning, I put on lipstick for the first time in months. Nothing fancy, just a little rose-colored gloss. I brushed my hair, pulled on a crisp blouse, and went down to the corner cafe where I used to meet friends before everyone moved away or got too busy. I ordered a cappuccino and sat outside, watching people pass. A young woman with a baby strapped to her chest, an elderly man walking his beagle, a group of teenagers laughing too loud. And for once, I didn't envy them. I studied them. I saw the weight they carried, the tired eyes, the tight smiles, the way they all moved like they were trying to outrun something invisible. And I thought, maybe I'm not the only one who feels forgotten. I took out my notebook, the one I hadn't touched since my husband died, and I started to write. Not about Lisa, not about Joy, about me, who I used to be, what I used to want, what I had buried under diapers and dinner plates and school forms and compromise. By the time I finished that page, something inside me felt different, not healed, but open. Later that week, I signed up for a watercolor class at the local community center. I hadn't painted since I was in my 20s. My hands were slower now, my lines messier. But there was something comforting about letting color bloom where once there was only quiet. At first, I didn't talk much, just listened. But then a woman next to me, her name was Bernice, leaned over and said, "That shade of blue reminds me of something. A baby blanket, maybe?" I smiled. Mine too. We talked, not about our children, not at first. We talked about books, about how hard it was to find shoes that didn't hurt. About the difference between being alone and being lonely, and something about it felt good, real. After class, she said, "You want to grab a sandwich? I know a spot that still makes decent tuna melts." I almost said no, almost made an excuse, but instead I nodded. Sure, I'd like that. That evening, back home, I walked past the packed nursery corner, the one I had built for Joy, and paused. The shelf still held the toys, the blankets, the soft lullaby CD, but I didn't cry. I just stood there, hand on the doorframe, and whispered, "I don't regret loving you. I never will. But I won't stay invisible for you anymore." Then I turned off the light and walked away. It was a Tuesday when the first envelope arrived. Plain, white, no return address, just my name in neat handwriting across the front, Eleanor James. Inside, a thank you card, not from Lisa, from Doreen. "Thank you for understanding your place during such a sensitive time." It meant a lot to the whole family that things stayed peaceful and drama-free. There was no warmth in the words, no kindness, just control wrapped in cursive. And just like that, I knew. She wasn't just excluding me, she was erasing me. It wasn't enough for her to have the house, the nursery, the birth. She wanted the story too, the legacy. She wanted to be the one Joy would remember as grandma. The only one. I stood in my kitchen, the card in my hand, my tea growing cold on the counter, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel grief. I felt fire. I walked to my closet, pulled out the storage bin marked Joy's firsts, and dumped its contents onto the bed. Every diaper, every bottle, every tiny knitted sock. I gathered them into two piles, one to donate, one to keep. The ones I donated were useful. The ones I kept were sacred, a memory, a reminder, not of who I'd been to them, but of who I still was to myself. I boxed everything up and drove straight to the women's shelter on the edge of town. I walked in, handed over the baby supplies, and when the woman at the desk asked if I wanted a receipt for the tax deduction, I smiled. No, I said. Just make sure it goes to someone who wants to be a mother. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because anything had been fixed, but because for the first time, I had done something that wasn't about Lisa, or Joy, or some fantasy of being invited back. I had drawn a line, and the next morning I kept going. I called the utility company, canceled the automatic shipment of diapers. I updated my will, removed the trust fund clause I had once written for Lisa's future child. That was the hardest part, not because of the money, but because of what it represented, the future I thought I was a part of. I clicked delete and stared at the screen for a long time. Then I said it out loud. She doesn't get to erase me. The following week, I found myself back at the art center. Not just for class this time. They were looking for volunteers to help with their spring fundraiser. Normally, I would have hesitated. Too busy, I might have said. Too tired. But now I had time. I had space. And I needed something, anything, that reminded me I still had something to offer. They paired me with a group of women planning the event. Most of them were younger than me. One had a baby still nursing. Another was newly divorced and trying to figure out how to start over. We weren't the same, but we were all trying. That afternoon, while cutting ribbon and writing out invitations, the woman with the baby, her name was Jules, asked if I had grandkids. I paused, then smiled softly. I have one. Her name is Joy. Do you get to see her much? I took a breath. Not yet, but maybe one day. She nodded like she understood. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I didn't owe anyone a story that made them comfortable. I could just be honest and whole, even if I wasn't included in someone else's chapter. 2 days later, my phone rang. Lisa. Her name blinked on the screen like a ghost. My heart stuttered. I didn't answer, not because I was angry, but because I was finally at peace. I let it ring, let it go to voicemail. Then, slowly, I tapped to listen. Hi, Mom, her voice was quiet. I thought maybe you'd want to meet her. Joy, I know it's been a while. I know things got messy. I guess I just hoped. There was a pause, a shuffle, then a faint cooing in the background. She's smiling now. You'd love her smile. Another pause. Anyway, no pressure. Just if you want to. The line clicked off. I stared at the wall for a long time. My tea had gone cold again. But this time I didn't feel frozen. I felt choice. Because for the first time, I held the power. Not Lisa. Not Doreen. Me. That evening, I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Lisa. To Joy. I wrote about who I was. About her mother when she was little. About the songs I used to sing. The dinners I used to make. The strength it takes to love someone who doesn't see you anymore. I sealed the envelope, labeled it for when she's ready, and placed it in my drawer. Because maybe I wouldn't be invited now. Maybe not even this year. But one day Joy would grow up. One day, she might wonder about the other grandmother. The one with the quiet house and the warm hands. And when she did, she'd find me waiting. Not with bitterness. Not with shame. But with truth. Because love doesn't disappear just because it's ignored. It sits quietly, patiently, like a lighthouse in the fog, waiting to be found. It started with a red scarf. A bright one, the kind you'd never catch me wearing 10 years ago. But that morning I looked in the mirror, saw the tired cardigan and faded jeans, and thought, why not? So I wrapped the scarf around my neck, tied my hair back into a loose bun, and went to the cafe. It wasn't anything special. Just the place down the block with slightly bitter coffee and scones that always crumbled too fast. But it had windows, big ones, and sunlight. And that morning, I needed light more than anything. I brought my journal. ordered a cappuccino, sat by the window and began to write. Halfway through a sentence about tulips and truth, someone spoke. I love that scarf on you. I looked up. She was around my age, maybe a few years younger. Silver streaks in her dark hair, eyes that smiled before her mouth did. She wore a linen blouse and carried a canvas tote bag full of books. Thanks, I said, a little surprised. It's new. She pointed at the chair across from me. Do you mind? I didn't, and so she sat. Her name was Evelyn. She had just moved into town from Portland to be closer to her son, a doctor at the local hospital. He thinks I need supervision, she said with a wink, but joke's on him. I just wanted better weather. We talked. About nothing at first. About the coffee. About the garden club. About how hard it is to find a good pie crust in the store these days. Then slowly about more. She told me she was widowed too. 5 years. Liver cancer. They caught it late. She'd been married for 32 years. He was a quiet man, she said. But when he loved, it was like standing next to a furnace. I told her I knew that kind of love. That kind of grief. We didn't exchange phone numbers that day. But I saw her again 2 days later. Same cafe, different scarf. This time, I asked her to sit. A pattern began. Every Tuesday and Friday we'd meet. We'd bring our journals, our stories, our silence. We didn't always talk about our children, but sometimes we did. She told me her son rarely visited. Too busy, too tired, too important. I told her about Lisa. I didn't say everything. I didn't need to, but I said enough. And one day, Evelyn said something that stopped me cold. You don't have to earn your way back into someone's love. That's not how love works. I blinked. But you already were there, Eleanor. You already gave. That's enough. I didn't respond. Not right away. But later at home, I opened my drawer, looked at the letter I wrote to Joy, and whispered, maybe one day you'll know the whole story. One Friday morning, Evelyn brought a folder with her. She pushed it across the table. I want you to read something. Inside were short stories, pages of beautiful, aching prose. You wrote these? She nodded, suddenly shy. I used to publish in journals, before life got full. They're stunning, I said. She smiled. I want to start again. I thought maybe you would too. I didn't understand what she meant. Start what? She leaned forward. There's a small reading series at the library. Nothing fancy. Just locals sharing what they've written. You should come. Read something. Oh, I don't know, I said quickly. I'm not. You are, she said. You just forgot. That night, I stared at my journal for hours, flipping through pages about tea, tulips, joy, silence. I picked one page, just one, and copied it neatly onto fresh paper. I was going to read. Not for an audience. Not for Lisa. For me. The reading was on a rainy Thursday. Nothing dramatic. Folding chairs, paper cups of coffee, a microphone that squealed every few minutes. But when I stood up and walked to the front of the room, something inside me settled. I read my piece, just a reflection about how grief feels like laundry left in the rain. And when I finished, the room was quiet. Then someone clapped. Then more. Evelyn was in the back, beaming. That night, we went for dinner. And for the first time in years, I laughed so hard I cried. I didn't tell Lisa. Not about the reading. Not about Evelyn. Because this part of my life, it wasn't hers. It was mine. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for an apology. Not for permission. Not for love returned. I was living. And that I realized was its own kind of motherhood, a rebirth not of babies, but of self. It was a Sunday morning when the phone rang. I was in the kitchen, kneading dough for cinnamon rolls, something I hadn't done since before Lisa's wedding. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla was just beginning to fill the house when I heard it. The old landline, the one I barely used anymore. I wiped my hands on a towel, answered, and froze. Hi, Eleanor. It's Michael. His voice. I hadn't heard it since the day I left their house, since he barely looked up when I walked out the door with my arms full of diapers and silence. He sounded different now. Tired. Hesitant. I didn't say anything at first. Just waited. He cleared his throat. I hope I'm not intruding. I didn't know who else to call. Still, I said nothing. He sighed. Lisa's not doing well. That's when I sat down. The chair creaked beneath me. My hands, still dusted with flour, gripped the edge of the table. What do you mean? She's overwhelmed, he said slowly. She hasn't slept in days. The baby's colicky. Doreen left last week. Said she'd done her part. I blinked. She left. She said she had a cruise booked. Non-refundable. Of course she did. And you? I'm working double shifts, trying to cover the bills. And look, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. I know we handle things badly. That was an understatement. But Lisa, she asks about you. At night, when she's rocking the baby and crying. She doesn't say it directly, but I know. She needs her mother. My throat tightened. I wanted to ask why now. Why not when I showed up with a trunk full of love? Why not when I stood in your living room being dismissed like a stranger? But I didn't. Instead, I said, does she know you're calling me? A long pause. No, of course not. She wouldn't ask. She thinks she burned the bridge completely. I exhaled. Slowly. Carefully. She did. I know, he whispered. But if there's any part of you that still wants to see your granddaughter. Another pause. I think now's the time. After I hung up, I sat in silence. The dough on the counter had begun to rise, warm and sweet under the towel. But all I could smell was old grief. Part of me wanted to run. The other part, the part that still kept the letter to Joy in my drawer, whispered, maybe this is the moment you've been waiting for. But here's the thing about being erased. Once it happens, coming back isn't simple. You don't just walk through the door again. You have to decide who you are when you do. I didn't call back right away. Instead, I baked the cinnamon rolls. I iced them with trembling hands. Then I packed 6 of them into a tin. Wrapped it in a towel the way I used to when Lisa was little, when she was sick or scared or just having a bad day. Then I walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, and took out the pink blanket, folded it gently, and placed it on top of the tin. That afternoon I drove. Same highway, same turns. But this time, the car wasn't full of baby supplies. It was full of boundaries, of knowledge, of the woman I had become. When I pulled into their driveway, I sat there for a long time. My hands rested on the steering wheel. The scarf Evelyn gave me sat in my lap, like a shield. And then I rang the bell. Michael opened the door. His eyes widened just slightly, not with shock, but with relief. He stepped aside. She's upstairs. I'll take the baby for a bit. I nodded, walked past him without another word. The house was different. Messier. Real. A diaper bag sat open on the couch. Bottles on the coffee table. A burnt cloth thrown over the banister. It looked like a home, not a museum curated by Doreen. And that's when I heard her. Soft sobs from the second floor. I climbed the stairs slowly. The nursery door was open. Lisa sat in the glider, hair unwashed, eyes swollen, baby Joy asleep on her chest. When she looked up and saw me, she didn't speak. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. I walked in, set the tin on the dresser, and sat in the chair across from her. Still silence. And then, finally, she said, I didn't think you'd come. I stared at her. Neither did I. She swallowed, looked down at Joy. She cries all the time. I haven't slept in 4 days. I haven't eaten in 2. Doreen kept saying I was being dramatic, that I should be grateful, that other women have it worse. I didn't say anything, just listened. I thought I could handle it. I thought. Her voice cracked. I thought I didn't need you. Tears filled her eyes. I was wrong. The words hung in the air, like a breath finally released after too long. I stood, walked over, touched her shoulder, then gently reached for Joy. Lisa didn't resist. She handed her to me, like a weight she could no longer carry. And when I held my granddaughter for the first time, all the pain, the silence, the erasure, it faded into the back of the room. Not gone, but no longer holding all the power. Joy opened her eyes, looked up at me, and smiled. Joy was warm in my arms, tiny, soft, perfect. Her breath brushed against my collarbone, and for a moment, time stopped. My heart broke and healed at the same time. Lisa didn't say anything. She just watched me, maybe wondering how I could hold this child with so much grace after everything that had happened. Maybe wondering if I'd stayed angry. But anger wasn't what I felt. What I felt was something quieter, stronger, clarity. After a while, Joy stirred, made that tiny newborn squeak that only brand new babies make. I smiled, held her closer, whispered, "You've been waited for, little one." Long before anyone else realized it. Lisa wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry." The words came out small, fragile. I looked at her, and for the first time in months, I really saw her. Not the version curated by Doreen, not the daughter who let me walk away, but the exhausted, overwhelmed young woman who once needed me to check for monsters under her bed. "Being sorry is a start," I said gently, "but it doesn't erase everything." She looked down, ashamed. "I know. I came when you needed me," I continued. "Not because I forgot what happened, but because I remembered who I am." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I'm your mother," I said. "Not your servant. Not your safety net. Not a spare grandma. I'm someone who matters, even when I'm inconvenient." Lisa didn't respond. She just nodded, slowly. We sat like that for a while, 3 generations in one room, each with our own kind of silence. Then I handed Joy back. Lisa took her a little unsure, like she was holding something she wasn't sure she deserved. I walked to the dresser, picked up the tin of cinnamon rolls I had brought, and placed it next to her. "She might not remember me," I said softly, "but you will." And then I turned to leave. Lisa panicked. "Wait, are you going?" "I came to give you what you asked for," I said. "Help. Not a full surrender." She stood, baby in her arms. "Please stay. Just a few days. I'll make it right." I paused. Every instinct in me wanted to say yes. To stay. To fix things. To hold the baby every night in warm bottles and run laundry and feel needed again. But then I remembered something Evelyn had once said over coffee. Being useful is lovely, but being respected? That's the real gift. So I turned back to Lisa and said, "I'll come back." But not like before. Not as someone who waits to be tolerated. Lisa nodded. Her eyes were full again. "Okay. I understand." "I hope you do," I said gently. "Because next time, I'm not coming for your comfort. I'm coming for Joy's future." I left that house with no drama. No slammed doors. No crying in the driveway. Just peace. I had drawn my line in the sand. And for once, no one dared step over it. Back at home, I lit a candle, sat by the window with a cup of tea, and smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because I was no longer broken. There's a difference between being soft and being a doormat. I had been both, but now I was something new. Steady, silent, strong. 2 days later, Evelyn and I went to the art gallery. She had a piece on display, a painting of a woman standing at the edge of a forest, looking out at an open field. I asked her what it meant. She said, "It's about stepping into something wild and not apologizing for surviving." I stood there, tears welling, because I understood it, deep in my bones. That night, Evelyn handed me a small box. Inside was a key. "To my studio," she said. "I think it's time you started painting again." I opened my mouth to protest. "I'm not ready." She smiled. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up." The key Evelyn gave me was small, brass, and a little bit worn, like it had stories of its own. It jingled softly on my keychain as I unlocked the studio door for the first time. The space was simple. Wooden floors, tall windows, shelves lined with paint, brushes and jars, and canvases leaning against the wall like sleeping giants. It smelled of turpentine and something sweet, maybe hope. Evelyn had cleared a corner for me. A sturdy easel, a worn stool, a table with clean cloth and empty frames. "This is yours," she said. "No pressure. Just presence." Presence. That was the word I held on to. For so long, I had been present for others. Lisa, my husband, the job I kept even when it wore me down. But I had never been fully present for myself. Until now. The first day I didn't paint. I sat by the window, watched the afternoon sun slide across the floorboards, and listened to the silence. The silence didn't scare me anymore. It welcomed me like an old friend. I opened my sketchpad. drew a teacup, a daffodil, the edge of a rocking chair. Small things, ordinary things, but each line felt like reclaiming territory I'd long since given away. Over the next few weeks, I returned again and again. Sometimes Evelyn was there, sometimes not. Sometimes I painted. Sometimes I just stared at the canvas, letting the colors talk before I did. I painted the blanket I made for Joy. I painted a door left slightly open. I painted a woman standing barefoot in the rain. Each image came not from memory, but from the space beyond memory, from feeling, from becoming. One day, Evelyn peeked over my shoulder and asked, "Have you thought about showing them?" I shook my head. "They're not good." She laughed. "They're real." "That's better." A week later, without telling me, she submitted 2 of them to a local community gallery. I found out the night they emailed us both, "Congratulations. Your work has been accepted for exhibition." I sat on my couch, phone in hand, blinking at the message. Me, Eleanor, the woman who had once been sent away like an old suitcase. The woman who used to cry into her tea because her daughter stopped seeing her. I was going to be in a gallery, not for anyone else's approval, not for some empty praise, but because my voice, my brush, my hands had found their way back to me. When the night of the show arrived, I wore a navy blue blouse, silver earrings, and yes, that same red scarf. Not because I needed to impress anyone, because I liked the way I looked in it. The gallery was buzzing with soft music, murmured conversation, and clinking glasses of cheap white wine. My painting hung on a simple white wall. A woman with silver hair, holding a letter in one hand and a paintbrush in the other. I titled it Inheritance, not of money, but of voice. People stopped, looked, some even cried. A younger woman, maybe in her 30s, touched my arm and said, "This reminds me of my grandmother. She was everything, and we didn't see it until too late." I smiled. It's never too late to remember. That night, I got a text from Lisa. Just one line. "Michael told me you were in a show. I'm proud of you, Mom." I didn't reply. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Because for the first time, I didn't need her words to feel whole. I had already come home to myself. It was a Thursday morning, and the rain was gentle. Not the kind that makes you close windows, but the kind that makes you want to sit by one, warm mug in hand, watching the world slow down. That's where I was when the knock came. 3 soft taps. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, walked to the door and opened it, and there she was, Lisa, holding Joy, and a small paper bag in her free hand. She looked different. Not glamorous, not polished, human. Her eyes were tired, makeup smudged, hair in a messy bun. But she looked real, present, not like the curated version Doreen once tried to mold her into. "Hi," she said softly. I looked down at Joy, now almost 4 months old, chubby-cheeked, curious, staring at me like she already knew something the adults hadn't figured out yet. Lisa extended the bag. "I brought your favorite, almond croissants, from the place by the library." I didn't reach for them. Not yet. Instead, I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, adjusting Joy on her hip. Sat down at the kitchen table like she used to, like she remembered where things belonged. Joy reached for the spoon rest on the counter. I handed her a wooden spatula instead. Lisa smiled. "She's grabbing everything now." "She's strong," I said, and I wasn't just talking about Joy. Silence fell. The good kind. Then Lisa cleared her throat. "I've been thinking a lot." I waited. I don't know how to explain what happened, or why I let it. "You don't need to," I said calmly. "Not all at once." "But I want to," she replied quickly. "Because I was wrong. I let someone else's expectations of what a mother should be speak louder than what I knew in my bones." She paused. "You. I needed you. Not Doreen's photo-ready plans. Not her perfection. I needed my mother. And I'm sorry I didn't say that until it was too late." My throat tightened, but I stayed still, grounded. I'd been here before, at the edge of forgiveness, staring down the canyon of past wounds. This time I had a map. Lisa reached into the baby bag and pulled out a small envelope. "It's Joy's baptism," she said. "It's next Sunday. I know it's short notice, but," her voice cracked, "I'd like you to be there." not just as a guest, as her godmother. I blinked. The word landed like thunder wrapped in velvet. Godmother. Me. After everything. I didn't know if you'd say yes, she added quickly, but I wanted to ask. Honestly. I took a slow breath. The old me would have leapt to say yes. The woman I am now. She chose to pause. Why now? I asked. Lisa looked down at her daughter, then back at me. Because I realized what legacy means. It's not what we pass down in money or gifts. It's who shows up when things fall apart. And I want Joy to know you showed up, even when I didn't deserve it. There it was. Not just an apology. A reckoning. I'll come, I said. But I won't pretend nothing happened. Lisa nodded, eyes glassy. I wouldn't ask you to. And I won't be the kind of grandmother who stays silent to keep the peace. I'll tell her the truth. Gently, but truthfully. About where we came from. About how we broke. And how we tried to fix it. Tears slipped down her cheeks. That's all I want. We sat there quietly for a while. Then Joy burped, startling herself, and all three of us burst into laughter. It was the most natural thing in the world. That night, I opened my drawer and pulled out the letter I had written to Joy months earlier. I didn't need it anymore. So I placed it in the fireplace, watched it curl, blacken, and vanish, because she would hear my story, not through whispers in paper, but in person, from me. The church was smaller than I expected. Not the grand cathedral I imagined when Lisa said baptism, but a quiet brick chapel tucked beneath a canopy of trees. The kind of place you could drive past 100 times and never notice until you needed something sacred. I wore a dark green dress. Nothing flashy. Just enough to feel like myself. Around my neck, a silver locket. Inside it, a photo of Lisa when she was Joy's age and one blank spot waiting. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habit. Doreen was already there. She stood near the front pew, talking to a group of friends like nothing in the world had ever touched her. She saw me. Her smile froze for half a second, then resumed. She walked over, heels tapping on the stone floor like a warning. Eleanor, she said, her voice syrupy. I nodded. Doreen. Her eyes flicked to my locket, then to the baby gift bag in my hand. I didn't know you'd be here. You didn't think I would, I corrected gently. She bristled just a little. Well, I suppose the more, the merrier. No, I said calmly. Just the ones who matter. Before she could respond, Lisa appeared. And to my quiet astonishment, she stood between us. Hi, Mom, she said, smiling. Then turned to Doreen. Can you give us a moment? It wasn't a question. Doreen blinked, then walked away. It was the smallest thing, but it meant everything. Lisa led me to a side pew near the front, where a white linen cloth had been draped over a simple wooden font. She looked nervous. I didn't tell everyone, she whispered. Just the priest, Michael, and you. Tell them what? That you're the godmother. That you're the reason this baptism is even happening. I blinked. Lisa, you didn't have to. I wanted to, she interrupted. Because I've let a lot of people speak for me. Not today. She turned, walked toward the altar, and I followed. The ceremony was quiet. Just family. The priest's voice was soft, like rain on a rooftop. He asked Lisa and Michael the usual questions. Will you guide this child in faith and love? And they said yes. Then he looked at me. And you, Eleanor, as godmother, will you stand beside her when she falls? Will you remind her of who she is when the world forgets? I didn't hesitate. I already do. When the water touched Joy's forehead, she didn't cry. She giggled, and everyone laughed, even the priest. I glanced at Doreen. She didn't smile, not because she wasn't happy, but because she knew in that moment she had lost something she couldn't control. This wasn't her scene anymore. After the service, there was a small reception in the church hall. Nothing fancy, lemonade, finger sandwiches, sugar cookies in the shape of doves. I stood near the window, Joy in my arms, rocking her gently while she gnawed on her mitten. People came over, some I knew, most I didn't. They all said the same thing. She looks just like her mother. I smiled. She has her own light. Eventually, Lisa came to my side. She's so calm with you. I kissed Joy's forehead. Babies can sense things. Who's safe? Who's solid? Lisa nodded. Then, slowly reached into her purse, pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote you something, she said. You don't have to read it now, or ever, but I needed to say what I couldn't say out loud. I took it, didn't open it, just held it. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. I'm still learning how to be a daughter again. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, I'm still learning how to be a mother without losing myself. And in that moment, we were even. Not equal, not healed, but human and willing. Later that night, I drove home with Joy's pacifier still in my pocket. Accidentally, I told myself, but I didn't return it right away. I placed it on my nightstand, next to the locket, a reminder, not of what I'd missed, but of what I reclaimed. I never read Lisa's letter. Not that night, not the next, but one rainy Sunday I finally opened it. It wasn't long, just a page and a half, but every word was hers. Messy, honest, raw. She wrote about shame, about pride, about the fear of becoming a mother while still needing one. And at the bottom, she wrote, You were never unneeded. I just didn't know how to need someone without feeling like I was failing. I cried then, not the tears of loss, but the tears of release, because I had been waiting for someone to validate my worth. But the truth was, I had already done that for myself. Joy is nearly walking now. She says my name, not Grandma, not Nana, just Elle. Short, strong, all mine. Lisa brings her over once a week. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't, but there's no pretending anymore. No folding chairs in the kitchen, no doors closed behind swinging trays, just tea, paint, light, and the knowledge that I came back not because I was begged to, but because I chose to, on my terms, in my power, with every bottle and diaper packed into the trunk and every boundary, every breath, every no, I found my way home. Not to their house, to myself,